name is Jeff Myers. I'm the managing editor of Concentrate and sister publication Metro Mode, which covers Metro Detroit. We try to hold one of these speaker events each month, and we hope that we present topics that are of interest to the community. The speaker series is generously underwritten by the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. I'd like to thank also Conor for providing this awesome space. Today's event is the last in a four-part series where we're partnering with Ann Arbor's DDA to broaden the conversation about what makes a great downtown. We've had different topics over the last few months, and oh no, this is the third. I'm sorry, not the fourth. I'm jumping the gun. Sorry about that. This is the third in the fourth series. And while these discussions are connected to the Connecting Williams Street project, the idea is to present bigger themes and ideas for our city to consider, not really the specifics of the project. So if you do have questions about that project specifically, I would ask that you actually talk to some of the members of the DDA who are here today afterwards, and not really make them part of what we're doing here, because we're not really here to address those kind of things. Our guest today is Todd Poole. After his presentation, we'll have a panel discussion. As you can see, there are note cards and pens on the table. If you want to write out questions for the panel or for Todd that will follow, you can do so, and we'll give them to our moderator, and he will put them to the guests at the end of the evening. Turn the page. Sorry. What makes a business want to set up shop in a downtown? How do downtown policies and infrastructure impact their ability to thrive or to attract the best and the brightest employees? What are the businesses that choose to move into the city's core looking for? There's a blog called Centers and Edges by Matt Taker, who's a principal at Diet and, you have to forgive me, Botch, in San Francisco. It's an urban planning and design firm. And it's a very good blog. And in one of his articles, Urban Centers in an Era of Job Decentralization, he writes, while many business sectors will continue to out-migrate for the present, there are reasons that skilled workers want to repopulate urban centers and private businesses want to invest in being there. One advantage is what Mark Muro and Peter Katz call the cluster movement, where concentrations of businesses and organizations can connect, can seek synergies and efficiencies. Clusters are hotspots of productivity and collaboration, where companies team up, share technologies, develop innovations, and draw on a highly skilled labor pool to start new businesses and create jobs. Firms that need to collaborate or confer frequently can do so more easily when likely partners co-locate within walking distance. For public policy, a best strategy to promote employment clusters is to encourage job growth in downtowns, where transit and complementary land uses already exist. Downtowns can be strengthened as employment locations with additional investments in transit and parking infrastructure, and with programs that promote alternative modes, efficient parking, pedestrian-friendly streets, and context-based architecture. As a bigger share of jobs is captured by urban centers, it will make home-to-work transit use more feasible and put in place a more resilient pattern of land use and infrastructure. So this is part of the centerpiece of our discussion tonight. And to address this in the context of Ann Arbor, we have Todd Poole. He is the president and founder of Forward Planning, LLC. Before founding Forward Planning, Todd served as the director of economic planning for the EDAW's U.S. operations, one of the largest land use consulting firms in the world. Todd and his team supported a variety of public and private use projects with economic, fiscal, and policy analysis. In this capacity, Todd has managed or co-managed a variety of large land use planning projects. He's worked on the Milliken State Park project in Detroit. That's something he's currently working on. And last year worked on a project at Eastern Market. He's worked Todd has more than 20 years of extensive urban redevelopment, large-scale land reuse, community development, market analysis, and public policy experience as both a private sector consultant and a public sector practitioner. If you would please give a warm welcome to Todd Poole.
So you're probably all wondering why I asked you here today. And, I have a 500-slide show, so everybody has their sleeping bag. Kidding. Just a quick commercial. Forward planning, we are land use economists, and you don't hear that term all the time. We are part of the allied planning profession, and what we do is we provide support to planning firms, architectural firms, to developers, to cities, to transit agencies, and helping them understand economic and fiscal consequences, helping them understand the marketplace, and what's realistic and what is not. We've been fortunate to work on projects throughout the United States. I've had opportunity to work down in post-Katrina New Orleans. I've worked most recently, or I should say last year, I was part of a federal contingent team that went down to the Gulf, and we did some analysis and surveying down there, and we do a lot more modest projects than that, closer to home. We have offices in New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh, and we recently set up an office in Boston. So we get to practice in a lot of different areas, and we bring that experience to our work. I'm going to bring you through a very cursory show here. This is about an 80-page document. You're not going to see all 80 pages, something on the order of maybe 20 or 25. But this is just a snapshot of what we've discovered about not only the city of Ann Arbor, but its surroundings. The surroundings are important to understand because they influence what happens in Ann Arbor. Okay, it's kind of macroeconomy influences microeconomy. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay. So Jeff made a comment. Whoops. Jeff stated early on about what the issues are, what makes a downtown economically vibrant and attractive, what are the businesses that move into the city's core desiring or desirous of, and what facets of the downtown make it easier for them to find and keep the talent they need to succeed. I think the analysis that we're about to show you, and certainly the fuller report, answers most of these questions, or certainly a large portion of the questions. So let's start with kind of noteworthy interview comments. Part of the process, we don't just do quantitative analysis, we do qualitative, and part of that qualitative piece is performing interviews with local folks, businesses, real estate brokers, public officials, so on and so forth. I better stop this before it goes too far. And so I'm going to read this to you because I know it's probably too small to see, but here are some noteworthy comments we got from our interviews. Quote, doing a business deal or development project in Ann Arbor is tough. And specifically what that individual was saying was, it's tough politically to get a deal done, i.e. get it through the political process locally. Next quote, there's a limited supply of available quality housing in or near downtown. There are a number of smaller technology companies which would like to expand in Ann Arbor, but there are limited options to do so. And last quote here is, based on having a world-class university and major corporations, Ann Arbor needs a top-tier business class hotel in the downtown. Next set of noteworthy comments. Retail is not needed beyond Main Street. There is nowhere in Ann Arbor to host a 500-person sit-down dinner, because usually I like to do that at my house. Would like to see more job-creating businesses on the DDA's land parcels. Technology companies want to be downtown. And final quote, there is a growing wait list for technology incubator space. So these are, in no random order, some of the kind of key quotes or quotes that we thought were noteworthy to pull out. Here are some key findings from our analysis. I'm going to read these. Residential demand drivers are strong. And what that means is a combination of people wanting to be in downtown, whether they work here or they're downsizing from the suburbs. There is strong. We found that there are indicators that there is strong demand to be downtown. Indicators such as limited supply of rental housing stock, a quickly rising cost of living in terms of either rent or for purchase homes. 1/3. By 2015, approximately 1/3 of all persons within a 10-minute drive of William Street. Let me explain this whole 10-minute drive stuff. We looked at 3 geographies, and we always try to look at 3 geographies when we do our analysis for comparative purposes. You cannot tell anything, and I'm telling you in this business, you cannot tell anything by taking a snapshot of a geography. I don't care what it does over time. If you told me, just look at Ann Arbor over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and I saw that it was growing, let's say, 5% per annum, which is pretty significant growth, and then you said, so what does that tell you? I would tell you, it tells me nothing until I see what it does in comparison to the county, to the state, to some other geography, because everything is relative. That 5% per annum growth could be slow if everybody else is growing at twice the rate, right? So we always look at 3 geographies. And the geography that we looked at, the 10-minute drive contour, represents a primary market area. And we define primary market areas as those locations where about 70% of your customer base or people that patronize the area in the downtown would come from, within about a 10-minute drive, give or take. And that's for most goods and services. It varies depending on the nature of the retail. So we looked at that. And 1/3 of all persons by 2015 in that 10-minute drive contour will fall into the age of, or will be considered either young professionals, 25 to 34 years of age, or empty nesters, 55 to 74. We're going to talk about the importance of those 2 demographic groups. And the last one is more than 4 in 10. So about 40% of the households within that 10-minute drive time by 2015 will have household incomes of $75,000 or greater. That's $2,000, or it hasn't been adjusted for 2000. So nonetheless, what we found is the fastest growing households regionally and locally are greater than 75,000 and particularly greater than 100,000. Again, we like to ask the so what question. And the so what question is, when you have that kind of fast growth at the upper income levels, it's driving everything up in terms of cost. Housing, retail goods and services, which matters, and it is an economic issue. Because I will tell you, and I'll show you shortly, that when housing costs and other local costs go up, particularly when they go up quickly, that ultimately impinges upon local businesses and their labor costs, right? If I need X number of young tech workers to be here, and I realize that the cost of living is going way up, guess what? That's got to be reflected in your paycheck, otherwise they're not working for me, they're going to the guy across the street who's going to pay that rate. 160% of the national average. What we found is that in Ann Arbor particularly, and this comes probably as no surprise, dining out expenditures are about 1.6 times the national average. Thus, all these restaurants up and down your street, and by the way, you're going to probably get a lot more. Non-family households are the fastest growing households in the area, and this is consistent nationally. I will tell you that what we saw was population-wise, it's been pretty flat here from 2000 to 2010, and it's not expected to improve much. However, where there is change and where there's growth is in non-family households. So the census defines a non-family household as one person or more persons who are unrelated by blood, birth, marriage, adoption. Okay, so think of single persons or people sharing a residential unit for economic reasons or other reasons. And the important, or the so what question there for non-family households is these are typically small households. Small households translates into smaller housing units, typically translating into a lot of more multifamily units, rentals, and some condominium style housing. This is one of the most key findings or most interesting findings that we had is approximately 1,500 of more than 20,000. There's approximately 20,000 folks who are working somewhere in the downtown on a daily basis, okay? Only 1,500 of those estimated live somewhere in the downtown, okay? What's that? The downtown that we're defining does not include the university's major assets, okay? The downtown that we're defining actually kind of circumvents it or comes right at the edge of it. Because in particular, we use the 48104 zip code to define our downtown. The university's zip code comes right outside of that, and their employees are all over the place. But the important fact here is that a relatively small share, not more than 7% of the people that are actually working here on a daily basis in the downtown area live here. And the so what question there is, you got a lot of people commuting back out somewhere else, but it's also a reflection of there's probably pent-up housing demand for workers, people who want to be a little bit closer to their jobs, and probably employers who want that as well, because again, it's a cost issue. So we're going to dive into socioeconomic trends. You can't see this, so I'll read it to you. City of Ann Arbor's 2010 population, about almost 114,000. That population includes a portion of students. And I say a portion is because students at the university are both on campus and off campus. To the degree that they're off campus, they're getting picked up in that number. For census purposes, group quarters typically will capture dormitories, people living in prisons, people who are institutionalized. So this number does pick up some students. Yes. Hold your questions. I'll definitely answer them at the end. So total households, about 47,000. And then we have estimates for income, because those numbers have not yet rolled out from the census for 2010 for Ann Arbor. But estimate of median household income is around $61,000. And then we did the same thing for the 10-minute drive contour and the county, which also represents your local MSA. It's part of the greater Detroit MSA. So we look at a variety of demographic factors when we do our analysis, because there are different factors that tell us things. So one of the elements that we look at is age. If I get this to work properly. And so what we found is that age-wise, you have a lot of young people running around here in Ann Arbor. No great surprise, it's a university town. And I think the median age is around 28. However, where the growth is occurring is at the other end of the spectrum, the age spectrum. And that is occurring for folks who are 55 and up in particular. Again, this is consistent nationally. I think baby boomers are driving this trend, and it will continue for the next 20 plus years. I actually am a baby boomer, believe it or not. I'm 1964, so I just made it. Got my car. I'll be getting my AARP card next. So here on the screen, okay, let me see if I can do this. Yeah. So on the left-hand side, you have 25 to 34-year-olds. We're calling those young professionals. Okay, just got out of school, grad school, professional school, and not necessarily establishing a family, as family rearing has been delayed by this generation and continues to do so. The next group are 35 to 44-year-olds. We're calling these early-stage families. The next group, 45 to 54-year-olds, we're calling those late-stage families. Then we have 55 to 64-year-olds, which we're calling young empty nesters. And then 65 to 74-year-olds, older empty nesters. older empty nesters. And then 75 to 84, mostly retired. And of course, why do I use the term mostly retired, right? The dynamics have changed. The dynamics have changed. People, one, are living longer, they're living healthier, but for a combination of reasons, not least of which financial, people are staying in the workforce longer. So whereas 10, 15 years ago, the 75 to 84 crowd, you can almost say all retired, or basically all retired, now you really have to say mostly retired, which means they too want to be close to where employment opportunities are. And those are certainly in Ann Arbor's downtown and surrounding area. In terms of what developers are going to be looking at, in terms of developing residential product, They're looking at near and long term. Well, on the screen, what I'm showing you is the near term trend, and this is for the next 10 years, so think of that as near term. They're watching the young professionals who need housing close to where they work and certain types of housing units which they can't find right now. They're looking at young empty nesters who, now that the kids are out of the house, off to college or wherever, they want to downsize, all right? They want to kind of get rid of the 3,000 square foot house and half an acre yard and all the taxes that go with it and maintenance. And the same thing for older empty nesters, all right? Those are near-term drivers for housing stock. Longer term, and longer term being beyond 10 years, we have late-stage families, okay? So they'll kind of be the next group that will be paid attention to by the development community. Late-stage families are just that. They've got kids, but they're not ready to get rid of the bigger house, and they're out in suburban school districts and so on and so forth. But eventually, we will see those folks wanting to be closer to amenities they can walk to and other things they can access. We talked about household income. And again, this is just a chart displaying while the majority of households in and around Ann Arbor earn less than $75,000 per year, okay, that figure is changing, and there's a rapid growth in the folks who are earning $75,000 and up. And it's being driven by who you might think, young professionals, professors at the university, folks who are managing companies, starting companies here. You're getting a cluster of those folks, and of course, it's being reflected in the income levels. Still, we need to be mindful of the fact that we have a large contingent of folks who earn less than that and also need to be housed, all right? And given that housing stock is tight and it's becoming more and more expensive, that raises issues of affordability and where do we put, it's not just affordable housing, and I say that because somebody once told me that the President of the United States lives in subsidized housing, so we all need housing which is affordable. So we have this large contingent and we have to pay close attention to. And this is just kind of showing you the share and the growth trend for upper income households, in this case upper income being 75,000 or greater. As of right now, these are estimates in the Ann Arbor area, so in the city of Ann Arbor, in that 10-minute drive contour, and in the county. As of 2010, let's see, in Ann Arbor, about 36% of households have $75,000 or higher incomes. It's a little bit higher in that 10-minute drive contour and higher still in the county. So basically, as you go out from Ann Arbor and stay within the county, the affluence gets greater, okay? And it makes sense. Housing costs are a little bit higher in a lot of these places. But what's interesting about it is that that's going to reverse over the next 20 years when a number of those folks look to come back into the core. And there's this notion I want to dispel about what happens with empty nesters, after the kids leave and they migrate to Florida. Well, they don't migrate to Florida, and they've never migrated to Florida in the numbers that people think they do. That's myth. The fact of the matter is, the majority of moves that take place in the United States and have taken place in the United States and will take place in the United States happens within a county. It's intra-county movement. Okay, 7 out of 10 moves happen within the same county, and for these reasons. Because they found local employment, they want to stay close to family, friends, and other networks. Only when there's an employment issue that takes somebody outside of the county or the state do you see that kind of movement, typically. And why is this important? It's important because you live in a very affluent county. And again, as folks start to think, where am I going to live next, where am I going to move next, and they start to look at Ann Arbor, it's both good and, it's good, but there's challenges that come with that too, right? So just keep those things in mind. We take a look at consumer spending when we do these studies. We want to see, again, kind of relative to other geographies, what households are spending their dollars on. We use the Census Bureau's and the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey data to do this. what this basically says is you're above average nationally in most categories, but particularly above average in spending on dining out and on entertainment and entertainment services, basically. Entertainment services includes everything from, say, going to the Ark or movie, or going to the rodeo, to even going to an electronics store, which gets categorized in entertainment. The takeaway here is that money, the money that's being made is being spent, and it's being spent, on discretionary items, and particularly on dining out, thus all the restaurants. So part of what we do is we also look at labor and industry, because it's not only households that influence what happens in a market, but it's also labor and industry trends. And so what we're showing you up here on this map is the three geographies. In this case, we're showing you the downtown, that 48104 zip code, the city of Ann Arbor, and the county. And we look at how many primary jobs there are in these geographies. And a primary job is defined by the census is that job. You might have two jobs. It's the job that pays you most in terms of salary and wages. Okay, it's the one that's most important to you. So we estimated all the primary jobs based on a program that we use. And again, in that downtown area, you got about 21,000 people working. Okay, and those are full and part-time jobs combined. Okay, they're not just full-time jobs. It's a combination of the two. It covers all the different industry sectors. In the city of Ann Arbor, you've got about 101,000. This is as of 2009, by the way. It's actually gone up, and we checked that. You've got about 101,000 primary jobs in the city of Ann Arbor, and about 173,000 in the county. So Ann Arbor really is the tail wagging the dog, so to speak, or actually is the dog probably, because it's pretty substantial.
University jobs are in which category?
The university jobs are definitely going to be captured in the city of Ann Arbor. Yeah. Keep in mind that zip code that we drew does not capture a large number of university folks, and it's simply by virtue of how the zip code wins its way through the downtown area. These are the top 5 industries by employment in the county, and on the left-hand side is educational services, which leads all employment industries. They're just under, and this is as of 2009, they're just under 45,000 folks in the educational services industry, which includes the university employment, and it is a growing, expanding industry. Followed by healthcare social assistance, about 32,000, which is also growing, and then retail trade, which had about 15,000, which actually contracted, but it contracted during the Great Recession. Manufacturing, as you would expect, has also declined, about 17,000. And then at the very end, what I have circled here is professional, scientific, and technical services. And while it's the smallest of the top 5, we see it's kind of flattened out a little bit during the recession, but it's starting to grow again. And it's important is because the professional, scientific, and technical services are consultants, accountants, engineers, lawyers, office-using professionals, okay? A lot of the people that you see walking around downtown with jobs and going into office buildings and basically carrying laptops and those kind of things, they all fit into this category. And again, the so what question here is they're going to grow, and as they grow, they're going to demand, in certain cases, more office space. Now, the interesting thing here is we are in an economy now that is very mobile and technologically advanced. My company is very virtual. I have people that work for me in San Francisco, Charlotte, Virginia, and all over the place because we can do that. And even though we do have office space to go to, we're hardly ever there. That's going to kind of relieve some of the pressure, but there are businesses that absolutely need to have a physical presence when it comes to their workers and where they go. So that's a trend to pay attention to. So we talked about this interesting metric that we identified of how many people are working downtown, but the relative few that live downtown. So what this is showing you here is 2 years, 2005, 2009, and basically the metrics are relatively similar. And in 2009, we show that just under 20,000 people commuted in to the downtown to work. So they live somewhere outside of that zip code downtown area. Only just under 1,500 folks both lived and worked in the downtown, so really small percentage, like 7%. And then about 12,000 folks lived in the downtown area, or somewhere around there, and commuted out. So again, the finding here is that there's likely pent-up demand for housing, for workforce-type housing in the downtown area. And so we wanted to know, well, where do these workers in downtown actually live? And so using a program called On the Map, which is a free census program, anybody in this room can use it, and it's been around for about 10 years and keeps getting better and better. It's a geographic information system type program. We're able to map where people work and where they live. And you're probably wondering, how do you do that? The Census Bureau has a relationship with basically every state's Department of Labor. And anybody who's employed has unemployment insurance. And if you have unemployment insurance, you have data associated with you, which includes where you live and where you work. That data in particular, as well as the industry that you work in, that data is shared with the Census Bureau, and they map it in an aggregate form. And so folks like me get to use it and be a consultant on it. So here at the top, what's interesting is that where do workers in downtown live? Well, that downtown zip code in Ann Arbor falls third on the list. There's another Ann Arbor zip code, 48103. Then we have Ypsilanti at 48197. And then Ann Arbor again at 108. And then Ypsilanti at 198. And then it goes Barton Hills, Saline, Dexter, Chelsea, Belleville. We found a lot of people coming from Detroit, even Lansing. So you have people commuting from distances. In a lot of cases, these are distances that are 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and beyond. And it makes a lot of sense, particularly in this economy. This is a job-rich area, and particularly so in and around the downtown. If you want a job, where are you going to go? You're going to go where the jobs are. This is what we refer to as a heat map using the same program. We wanted to know not just for that downtown zip code, but where do all the workers in the city of Ann Arbor live? So the yellow outline, which I know is somewhat difficult to see, but this kind of yellowish amoeba-like thing, represents Ann Arbor. And the blue blotches that go out are zip code areas. And what it's showing us is that a substantial number of folks who work in the city of Ann Arbor proper live outside of the city of Ann Arbor. And we captured the zip codes. I've not put cities next to these yet, but suffice it to say that less than 30% of the people that are working in the city of Ann Arbor actually live in the city of Ann Arbor. Okay. We also looked at retail findings. I'm not going to take a lot of time here. I'm sorry, this is residential, excuse me. Looked at residential findings. So the top one says less than 3%. It's a multifamily rental vacancy rate within the Ann Arbor apartment market. 3% vacancy is extremely tight, and what it says is you need more multifamily or apartment rental units in and around this area. Why is that important? Well, it's driving up the cost of housing, which again is going to get reflected ultimately in what employers have to pay their employees in order to secure them. The bottom one says 1,300. 1,300 is the estimated number of new apartment units that we believe could be captured in the downtown. Now, that's not 1,300 units on the DDA's 5 parcels. It's just 1,300 units that could be captured somewhere in the downtown area, okay? Some of which, yes, would make their way onto one or more of the DDA's parcels. I believe actually the 1,300 is probably conservative and could be higher than that. Talked about the limited inventory of rental. We also have a limited inventory of office space. In the Ann Arbor submarket, there's about 6.5 million square feet of total office space. Can't really describe that to you, but it's a lot. And the Ann Arbor submarket covers the majority of the county. But I will tell you that the majority of that 6.5 million square feet is well outside of downtown. Okay, just as is the vacancy rate that we also found, which had been at 17%, but is now declining. It's still relatively high at about 14%. Most of that vacancy, as well as the inventory, as you might imagine, is also far outside the downtown. So one question here is, from our interviews and from what we examined in terms of supply or inventory in downtown, there's not enough of it. Businesses want to be here, particularly the tech companies. They want to be here. We've talked to some major corporations who would love to be in Ann Arbor, in the downtown proper. There is no suitable office space to make that happen. So the bottom number says up to 500,000 square feet, which is the amount of new office space which could be supported in the downtown over the next 5 to, let's call it, 8 years. Again, keeping in mind that we're not saying 500,000 square feet on the DDA's parcels, we're just saying in the market of downtown, about 500,000 square feet, of which some of that certainly can be captured on the DDA's parcels. We looked at retail. Maybe the key number here is the downtown contains approximately 62% of all the city's dining establishments, and as well as its sales. So this is dining central right here. Again, no surprise to anybody who lives here. More than 3 million gross leasable area. We need to know what the supply of retail is in order to do a supply-demand analysis. And we looked at all the retail in the area. If I have my map up here, basically there's probably a little bit more than 3 million square feet, contained in major shopping centers and smaller shopping centers in kind of a 10 to 15 minute drive from here. And most of that is in the type of retail, by the way, that would not necessarily make it or want to be in downtown for reasons of parking and also the store formats that they require. So I'm going to move quickly through here. Forecasts, supply. This is a quote that I pulled out. It was in the USA Today's paper yesterday, and I thought it was pretty timely, and I'll read it to you. It says, young millennials, so think, kind of pre-baby boomers, young millennials and older baby boomers are rejecting traditional suburban lifestyles in favor of urban living and shorter commutes. Many want to live near city centers so they can walk to work, shops, and restaurants, or take public transportation. They also prefer smaller homes because they are single or have no kids and don't want to spend their free time maintaining their homes. This is USA Today. So, and I think this particularly has a lot of relevance to the city of Ann Arbor and its surrounding communities. This is kind of showing you an inside baseball here. This is a supply-demand analysis for residential. I'm not going to bore you with the numbers, but just to say within that primary market area, that 10-minute drive time, if no new housing units were to come online by, let's say, the year 2021, there would be a need of at least 11,000 more units. And that's without any major population growth. That's kind of staying flat, okay? And you say, well, why do we need all those units if we're not growing? Well, housing wears out, okay? About 1% per annum on average. And we take that into consideration. And we also take into consideration pent-up worker demand. So that's factoring into that number. If you didn't build anything by 2026, the number just goes up to over 12,000. Under a growth scenario, i.e. a modest one, about 0.5% per year, those numbers increase. So by 2016, you would need a little over 11,000. By 2021, if you didn't build anything, close to 14,000. And by 2026, close to 16,000. These are not additive. So in other words, this is to say, if you didn't build anything, the burden just increases. Looked at office, told you about the inventory. These are millions of square feet. Talk about vacancy. It's high, but the key thing to remember here, it's high given where the office supply is located. It's on the interstate. It's far from outside of downtown. And guess what? The employers that are really, doing well and hiring, they're not recruiting their workers to that type of office space. Class A though it may be, it's not in the downtown, close to the coffee houses and the restaurants and walking distance to many other things, including transit. So it makes a difference. And you shouldn't think or have someone tell you, well, the office, the office vacancy rate is extremely high. Well, that's true, but what they say in real estate is location, location, location. It's in the wrong place. And just to confirm that, we looked at a map. We were able to map where all the office space was by building. We have a program that allows us to look at where all the buildings are and how much office space they have for lease at any given time. And then what we have highlighted in yellow are just those spaces that are within, within the central business district or that downtown area. And there's very little inventory in downtown. And typically, most of the space that is available is not much greater than 20,000, if that. Our conversations with both brokers as well as companies suggest that they need 50, 100,000 square feet minimum to accommodate their growth. All right, and again, this is important. Why? Is because the DDA controls lots and lot sizes that could accommodate some of that growth, which again is the DDA on the city's behalf.
Don't interject with
and they control lot sizes that could accommodate some of that space. So we go through an office supply demand analysis, and really what we do here, you're not going to be able to see this, is in the industry, there are factors associated with each industry and their employment, what percentage use office space. We're able to look at numbers of workers in a given industry, assign a factor based on how much office space or how many people likely use offices, and then we're able to know, how much office space ultimately is going to be in demand. So that's kind of what this chart is showing you. And then we calculated the millions of square feet of new office space that will be needed in the downtown. And that's where that 500,000 capture number comes from. We talked about the retail close in. We've mapped it. We've looked at all the major retail centers and some of the minor ones, which are here on the right: Traver Village Shopping Center, Westgate Shopping Center, Cranbrook, Oak, Carytown, Oak Valley. We have the major ones: Maple Village. Oops. Sorry about that. Briarwood, Valley View. The major shopping centers we're defining as over 200,000 square feet. Okay, so if it didn't hit that number, it became a minor shopping center. So we are at the end. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but we go back to these questions of what makes a downtown economically vibrant and attractive. Well, I think you have that. I mean, the vibrancy and the attractiveness, I think, is already here. That's been established, and barring anything unforeseen, it's going to probably remain. What are the businesses that move into the city's core desiring? Well, that's what has to be addressed. And what they're desiring is a place where there's sufficient housing, transit options, parking, and obviously space in which to do their business. Okay, and those are all land use issues. They're not exclusively land use issues, but they certainly are land use issues. And the last question: what facets of the downtown make it easier for them to find and keep the talent they need to succeed? And this one's kind of linked to that first one of, what makes it vibrant. Well, part of one of those facets would be open space, public space, right? So, and while we know there's probably too little open space or public space in the downtown, and there's certainly going to be a greater demand for it going forward, and we work in a number of cities where it is a critical part of economic development, having the right type of public space, open space, particularly for knowledge workers, these young workers. But let me say this: not all the open space or public space that's going to be demanded can make its way onto the DDA's parcels. All right, it is neither practical, nor economically practical, nor really possible, given the nature of the space. I will say that, the development that can take place on the DDA's parcels will play a role in creating the necessary funding to create the public space somewhere in the downtown. Okay, so it's kind of, the two have to work hand in hand. They cannot be decoupled. And I think the DDA is taking that very seriously and looking at that and what we're looking at right now. But I certainly agree that public space is part of the amenity package. So that's part of what how do they keep talent downtown? They want that space as well, and it certainly keeps it vibrant. So finally, the bottom line are these things. Redevelopment and development will be focused on a combination of office, professional, lifestyle type projects, and multifamily residential units. Those are the two specific types of uses that we see need to be addressed in downtown. Retail will follow it. Your retail environment is fine. Okay, while you do have some vacancies, those vacancies will turn quickly. All right, but this is the kind of market where retail will take care of itself. What you need to turn your attention to is facilitating more housing opportunities across a range of housing, affordable to a range of incomes and family households, and also office space. There will be ample opportunity to incorporate housing affordable to a broad range of households. That does exist. Again, however, the DDA's parcels are not the end of the story. We have looked at your entire downtown. This is but the beginning of what is going to be a 20-year process, a 20-year redevelopment process. The DDA is at the leading edge and can basically influence, for good or bad, what's going to happen development-wise. Because there are a number of properties, I can tell you right now, are going to be repurposed, redeveloped, and they're going to get a combination of housing, office, retail, and open space. So do not look at the DDA's parcels as this is it, it's make or break. No, it's the beginning. And it's going to be a long course of action. Given the limited number of development parcels in downtown that are controlled by the DDA, if you're deciding between office and residential, office should get the nod for this reason. Office needs to be specifically in a core area. Residential has more flexibility in terms of where it can go. And while you're going to get some residential downtown, on the periphery of the downtown, 1st and 2nd Street, you have more opportunity to park it there as opposed to putting office there. So we want to be strategic about where these land uses go. And then finally, there will be increased demand for parks and public open space. Yes, and I think it is a strategic decision on how things get developed over time determines where and when that public and open space comes online. So, and with that, thank you for being a good audience.
So we are going to move into the panel discussion. As I said, we put out cards and something for you to write on. I'll collect those. Before we jump into the panel discussion, I wanted to let you know that the University of Wisconsin Center for Community and Economic Development has a very good website that acts as a clearinghouse of articles and ideas for what makes a downtown vibrant and successful, and their focus in particular is on small and mid-sized cities. So I would encourage you to check that site out. There's lots of, it's called the Center for Community and Economic Development, okay? And I don't want to read out the long website because it's not an easy one to remember. So to further this conversation, we wanted to talk about what companies are looking for in our downtown. And we've invited people who actually run some of those companies in our downtown. Instead of giving lengthy introductions for the panel guests, I'll let them introduce themselves. I will, however, point out, I'm sorry, Rich, I have to say this, that Rich Sheridan, who's president and CEO, co-founder of Menlo Innovations, felt tonight's topic was so important to him that he decided to skip out on the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year event in Detroit, where he's actually nominated for this honor. Wow. So, big round of applause for Rich. While I collect your question cards, our moderator is going to be John Petz. He's currently the director of the Real Estate and Public Affairs at Domino's Farms Corporation, a property management and land development company in Ann Arbor Township. In his capacity, he manages land development projects on Domino's Farms. John has been heavily involved with the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti Regional Chamber, serving as the chair of the board of directors in 2011. He chaired the Chamber's Public Policy Committee in 2008 and 2009. During his term on the executive committee of the board, he was instrumental in helping the former Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti community chambers merge into one. He's actively engaged with the Urban Land Institute, which is the preeminent professional real estate association, including serving on the Michigan's chapter program committee. So I'm going to hand over moderating duties to John. I'm going to invite our speakers up, and I will circulate to the room.
They usually have a small one, but I guess it's not here. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to start with just a little precursor, and then we're going to get into some introductions here in just one moment. I want to thank everyone for being a part of tonight's event. So we're talking about building a competitive downtown for our business community and their employees. Downtown serve a variety of roles: civic and cultural centers, employment hubs, entertainment destinations, housing, and even some retail. And different employee sets have different prioritized needs. Middle-aged and married is very different from fresh out of college and single. It would seem Ann Arbor serves the middle-aged married workers fairly well. Some great neighborhoods, great schools we're aware of, a wide array of youth programs and opportunities, and some great cultural type institutions. But how are we serving the young single workers that are being attracted to these entrepreneurial type companies? An increasingly growing and important part of our employment base. Are there housing needs being addressed with the products we have? Are there transportation needs being met? We seem to have a good amount of entertainment and nightlife opportunities and enhancements that are being made for recreation with the addition of things like Arbor Cascades. But what is working right and what isn't working for businesses that rely on the talent pool to bring them downtown? We have the critical mass of business opportunities for our businesses and the employees and their employees to prosper in these downtown environments. With that, you've obviously already heard from Todd, but we have 3 dynamic business owners who have made a commitment to downtown. Some for personal, passionate reasons, others for strategic business reasons related to attracting their employees. With us, we have Jonathan Updike, CEO and co-founder of Hook Logic, who recently moved his company from 2 office locations in the downtown area into the former Leopold Brothers building on South Main. We have Rich Sheridan, President and CEO and co-founder of Menlo Innovations, who also has recently moved. I think they're still unpacking the boxes as of this week, from his prominent home in Carytown to a much expanded space in Liberty Square. And David Koziel, President and founder, Arbor Moon Software, calls Town Center Plaza building on 4th Street home. What we'd like to do is start with each of our 3 business owners to give us a little brief introduction about your business, the reason you selected downtown, and the general makeup of your employee base. So we understand, as we talk about vibrancy and your employee needs, what that sort of constituency is, and then we have a number of questions we're going to go into from there. So I'm going to start this. David.
Hi everybody, my name is Dave Koziel. I run Arbor Moon Software. We're in the building right above Eastern Accents and Banditos. If you look at those windows there, brand new windows, beautiful windows, those are our windows. Arbor Moon Software builds mobile apps. So a bunch of you have been getting smartphones lately and putting some apps on there. We work on those apps. We've built a top 5 music app, a top 5 sports app in the iTunes store. We worked on a educational app that's won national awards, and then we worked on a whole slew of little apps that various companies are using to promote their brands. Our workers tend to be in the family categories that were on the slides earlier, the young families and the older family categories, although we also have a few category after that, whose name I'm forgetting.
Older or young empty nesters.
Young empty nesters, and some of those as well. Some sitting in the back, even acknowledging. You asked a little bit what's important to us.
Your location.
To our location. Why are we downtown? Downtown has a sense of place, a sense of vibrancy. We feel like we're going somewhere when we go downtown. We could have gotten very cheap office space out buy Avis Farms or something like that. It would save me, a few $1,000s a month. Hey, that sounds like good money. But honestly, we want to be a place where our workers want to be. Downtown where we're at, we can walk out the door, there's a million places we can eat lunch. That's very important to my workers. They make good enough incomes that they don't need to bring a lunch into work. They can go walk out and buy a lunch, and they like the variety that we've got. Transportation, and not just transportation, but walkability and things like that are very important to my workers. I have a number of people who are biking into work or riding the bus. And sense of community, I tie this a little bit into sense of place. Arbor is very involved in a number of community groups. We run Cocoa Heads, which is a group for iPhone developers. We run our co-founder of Mobile Monday, Michigan. We run an e-commerce group called E-commerce Ann Arbor. And all these things are about building a technology community here in the greater Ann Arbor area. And we really like that, and so we wanted an office space where people could come to and feel like, yeah, they were coming to this meeting, and then there was something to come to after that as well. And so we host a number of those meetings in our space now as well.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Updike, co-founder and CEO of Logic. The company was actually started in New York back in 2004, and we opened an office here in Ann Arbor in 2008. I was a graduate of the University of Michigan and worked at a company called Beyond Interactive, which was started in Ann Arbor back in the 90s, and grew with that company, and a number of the people that started our office here in Ann Arbor were college with Beyond Interactive. What Logic does is at a high level, we help to understand and influence shopping decisions. We work with various types of e-commerce organizations, from automotive to travel to retail, and create programs that either help entice shoppers to complete purchases or help sites that operate retailers that operate shopping sites to create new revenue streams by selling advertising. Our decision to go downtown, when we started the company, when we decided to move an office here to Ann Arbor, at the time we had an office in Tribeca in Manhattan. Today we have a loft in Soho, and we actually wanted to have a similar vibe and feel to what we had in New York. The same kind of scene exists and where there's a vibrant downtown scene, and we wanted to have a very similar feel for, we didn't want to have the suburban office out in Ann Arbor and have the cool office in New York. If you actually see our offices, I think our Ann Arbor office is cooler now. And so we first moved to a space on Kingsley in Maine, which is, I think, an old German butcher shop. Also, personally, I really like character in buildings, to find old buildings and help to turn them into new uses. And so that was kind of a neat space, but we outgrew it, ended up in 2 offices, another one on Huron, and kind of was not good for the team to be split up. So we recently decided to open a new office on what was the Leopold Brothers Brewery on Main Street, which was vacant for 4 years, and what was a 1920s auto shop, a really classic old space that we were able to convert and turn into a modern workspace. Did I answer all the questions?
You did.
Okay, let's go.
I'm Rich Sheridan. I founded Menlo Innovations with my partners about 11 years ago. We just moved literally this weekend into our new office in the basement of a parking structure. It's very cool. You gotta come see it. I like to tell people that because when they walk in and see it, it's crazy what you can do with the basement of a parking structure. And we are focused on what I like to call the business value of joy. And what we do for a living with that kind of intentional culture is design and develop software for others. So you can imagine the kind of people I might have in the room. I recently measured simply because people kept asking me and I was not sure what the answer was, so I did a little anonymous survey. Average age of our workers is 34, median age is 27. Probably the greatest single trend in our workforce lately, Menlo babies. We actually let the moms bring in the babies to work, so it's kind of an event when we have a baby, because they usually come in for 3 to 6 months, all day, every day. And so we're now on Menlo Baby 7, and Menlo Baby 8 is coming in no later than a week from tomorrow. And so, well, I guess coming in the sense of arriving in the world, but coming into the office in about 3 months from now. And for us, I don't know, I think one of the coolest things about being an entrepreneur is you can make decisions about where exactly you want to be, have your office, that sort of thing. I'm a long-time Ann Arbor resident. I came to school here in '78, never left town, always worked in this town, never had a long commute. But until Menlo, I never worked downtown. And wow, it changed everything for me in terms of even my attitude about this city. And so we will never leave downtown. I probably shouldn't say that because I probably can't negotiate very well after this. We just won't. So, and quite frankly, we tend to find spaces that are not spaces that people think about. When we moved into the attic of Carytown, it was literally the attic of Carytown. It was a bunch of storage lockers for the merchants, and we cleared it all out, and everybody started walking in and saying, "This is like the coolest place ever in Ann Arbor." Like, well, it was an attic before we got here. Now we moved into an empty basement of a parking garage, and people are like, "This is the coolest space ever." I'm like, it was an empty basement of a parking garage. And so I'm kind of with John, thanks. I wanted to get to your party last night. I apologize I didn't make it at the same time. I want to see your space. So, but you can really do amazing things with imagination. And for us, a good part of that joy and tended culture is about the space.
So we got a few set questions. We're going to get into some of the audience questions here. So obviously, Ann Arbor is not Chicago or Boston or the Valley, but we in our downtown in particular should be competitive with a lot of key locations that we benchmark ourselves against. All of you have done business in locations around the country. You've seen a lot of creative environments, probably had to recruit some of your talent from those places, or maybe even lost some of your talent from those places. As you look at it, what do you see are the top 2 or 3 things that you think are working particularly well in Ann Arbor's downtown? And also, what are the top 2 or 3 things as you look around and hear from your employees that you think are really holding us back from succeeding?
Oh, let's see. What I find I love about downtown, and I believe my team does as well, is just the vibrancy, the foot traffic on the sidewalks, the availability of the restaurants, that sort of thing. I think, like Dave's team, my team tends to not bring their lunch to work and spill it onto the sidewalk, and we're enjoying the heck out of Grand Traverse Pie Company and that sort of thing, because that's where we are right now. So, what was the question, John? Sorry.
The top 2 or 3 things that you see are working particularly well for your business with the downtown, and the top 2 or 3 that you see that, you know what, this is a real struggle for us.
Well, it's interesting. We loved being in Carytown. I mean, it was a crazy idea to leave Carytown. It's such an amazing place. Joe O'Neill did such a great job with the Carytown Market Shops, and we were just, it was like Cheers there. Everybody knew your name. And so the idea to move from there down Liberty, obviously we're not moving far. I have to admit, there's part of me a little bit stunned at how seedy Liberty has become. So we really need to do some work on Liberty. I think Liberty could challenge University Avenue in downtown Palo Alto, California, for a new kind of Main Street, sort of a town gown connector sort of Main Street. Because what's working for me, and everybody knows, who knows me knows this is true, I hang out in coffee shops. I'm finding a whole new set of coffee shops. You won't find me in the corner of Sweetwater's anymore. I'm down in Starbucks or Big B or Lab or Bobo and that sort of thing. But I will tell you that those are the places that entrepreneurs congregate, bump into each other, building connections and relationships.
Let me ask with you specifically, Rich. You needed 17,000 square feet, right? There's about 4 or 5 spots in downtown that would have been able to provide that. Did you struggle finding the size that you need? Todd talked a little bit about, a lot of these entrepreneurial tech companies, they're looking, when you get out in the valley, they're looking for 50, 100,000 plus square feet. How did that affect you as far as the variety of space options you could consider?
Yeah, it's kind of a strange story. When we were in Carytown, we knew we needed to grow. We were just bursting out at the seams, and my CFO pulled me aside and he says, "Here, we just want to go show you a space that we found. I'm like, really, where is it? I think he might have described it as Tally Hall or something like that. And I'm like, Bob, you're kidding. We're going to move from Garytown to the basement of a parking structure. And he's like, well, I know, Rich, let's just go take a look at it. Well, I went down there and required a little bit of imagination, I have to admit. But when I saw Tech Art there and realized we'd be sharing a glass wall with a student incubator for the event, my heart went, and it was like, done. So it was actually an amazingly trivial search for us, even though we worked really hard with Joe and Neil for a while, thinking of crazy options we might do in Carytown. I told Joe, I said, you give me the Lewick building, Joe, and it wasn't the right amount of space. He's like, well, how much space do you need? I said, count up the number of space in the Lewick building and just give it to me, and I'll buy it from you if I need to. But I wanted that building badly, but that was just not going to happen. And Carytown's a labor of love for Joe, and it should be. I mean, it's an amazing place, and I wouldn't want to mess with it, but that kind of building was really interesting to me as well, but it just wasn't possible.
Jonathan, one or two things that work particularly well for your business downtown, not one or two things.
Okay. I think one of the top things, and kind of to formulate the question you asked at the beginning of this, was that what's unique about Ann Arbor, what can Ann Arbor compete against? And Ann Arbor isn't going to compete directly against New York City. It can't. It's a different scale. But Ann Arbor has its unique factors that its unique things can bring the unique aspects to certain businesses that will thrive here. And so a good example of that was last night we finished our get-together in our office and had gone out and came back, and about 10 p.m. we're walking out of the office, and some guy stops us out in front of the office and said, what do you guys do? And you start talking, and the guy's a mathematics PhD who's actually looking at future job opportunities. And you realize that that's one thing that's very special about Ann Arbor is the community of the university, how well it's tied into the town, and the ability to, we also have a lot of interns that intern with us in the summer. If we're out Davis Farms, they can't ride their bikes out there. So, and I worked out Davis Farms for a couple of years, so I know what it's like. And so it's a very, that's actually a core aspect to it. I think just the community and the ability to be part of something that's probably the right size for a lot of people. We actually recruited people who have come back from moving out of Michigan because they had the talent, they went to the University of Michigan, the families are here. That's actually a special thing. There's so many, I go to a bar in New York City on Michigan Football Saturday, and there are bars full of people from Michigan there. The exodus from Michigan has been incredible. So the fact that we can bring and either keep people here or bring them back, that's actually a special thing. Michiganders want to be here. So that's huge. On the problem side, honestly, the foreclosure problems in Ann Arbor were horrific in terms of having to deal with. We went into several lease negotiations, and you couldn't figure out who owned the freaking building. And, a bank, and then we had things get flipped out from under us when we were in the negotiations. We were being used as bait to get people to buy the building because somebody was interested. I don't mean to name names, but that space on Ashley Street over there that's been vacant for 5 years since it got built because nobody owns the thing. Honestly, it was a pretty crazy ride, and it was tough to find the right space. And we got actually very lucky. The Leopold Brothers was empty for 4 years, but I think it got converted from retail to commercial use very shortly before we started looking seriously at it. That was a challenge. Parking is obviously a challenge. It's expensive to buy parking spaces. We have some parking spaces in our building. We had to rent more for employees, and that's it's an extra cost of doing business and being downtown that we decided it was worth it. And I guess those.
Dave, just a couple of your thoughts on this?
So what's working for us? I would say talent attraction is working for us. There is enough people in this community that we're able to find highly qualified people to come work for us. And that's a feature that a lot of other companies I'm aware of in other communities would love to have. Unfortunately, the auto industry put a bunch of people out of work in this area, and we're able to take some of those people, and we've been doing retraining programs where we're taking people from other professions and help them shift code, shift gears, however you want to call it. I think that's working well for us. Being downtown and having a sense of community works well for us. Things that don't work well for us, office space. When Rich says he saw, there were like 5 possible places. I'm like, holy cow, I want that. Honestly, I only saw one building that really met my needs, and I'm in it now. And it's not ideal. It's got some challenges. There's not a lot of office space for the smaller end companies in Ann Arbor, or there's not a lot of office space that's anything other than, oh, we've got this one big room you can have. Well, not every company wants to have just one big room as an office. If you're not willing to sign a 4 or 5 year lease, nobody wants to do a build out for you. And in this small growth stage that we're at, where, you know, the size of our office that we moved into in December is 4 times bigger than the office we were in the year before. And I'm already looking at adding space to it. We can't sign a giant lease because of that. And so we can't do a build out. And so there are very little spaces that were possible for us. And that's a problem. I'd like to see Ann Arbor have 500,000 more square feet of office space downtown. That would be fabulous. I would have had options then maybe. I had one other thing that I was going to say. The other thing that I think needs improvement in the area is the retention of U of M talent. I believe the statistic is something like 90% of U of M graduates leave the greater Ann Arbor area within a year of graduating. To me, that statistic is horrible. I hate that statistic. I think that Ann Arbor needs to have more connection to those students so that they have more awareness of what Ann Arbor is and what opportunities are here. There are certainly plenty of opportunities in Ann Arbor that go unfulfilled and could be fulfilled by more U of M students. And I think that that is something that we work on in our user groups to try to find ways to encourage more of that connection.
Okay, so we're going to start some of the audience questions. Some of these are specifically addressed. Some of them will be a little bit more wide open as far as who would like to respond, although I may cap certain people. How can young entrepreneurs who use co-location and resource sharing still present themselves as having a strong permanent presence in downtown? And this may deal a little bit with that whole notion of third spaces, et cetera. So Maybe your hand came up, and I'd be interested if Todd's got some perspectives on what works in other areas of how people who don't have their own physical space still maintain visibility.
So Arbor Moon was in Tech Brewery a couple of years ago, and Tech Brewery is a shared space. And actually, it's a great space in terms of networking. The people that are in there are just fabulous. Unfortunately for us, it was not a great space in terms of our age level of my team. We were too old for the people. They were drinking beer, there were beer cans there, they were partying, and we wanted to bring in a client to sign a, 5-6 figure deal, and we had to come in early and clean up beer cans, and it just doesn't work at this point in my life. So, there are spaces, there's Tech Brewery, there's Work and Holiday Exchange, and we're actually talking to our landlord about trying to do our space in our building, the Town Center Plaza. And our space would be a managed space, so we have an office manager, and the office manager would make sure the space met my standards. Let's use that phrase. Because, it is important to have that presentability. I mean, unfortunately, we didn't have that presentability when we were in Tech Brewery. And that was just, you can't sign a large $10,000, $100,000 project in a room with beer cans on it. It just doesn't work. You have no credibility. So we want to try to work on that. We've got some space where we can put desks and then potentially have a conference room as well. And I think that this is something that Ann Arbor needs to encourage more of.
How do you want to weigh in from some of your broader experiences?
Sure. And I also have the privilege to work with incubator spaces, particularly technology incubator spaces. And what I see working in a lot of cities around the country is there are tiers of space available. So think of it, it's almost a life cycle, if you will, for young companies. They can't afford, high office rents, so they first start in their home in the garage, right? Then they go to the incubator, where they're shared conference room table, and even technology support and administrative support and business support, which is what they need. but they're encouraged to graduate out. They're more than encouraged, they're kicked out once they start growing, and they go to the next space, okay? And ultimately they become a grown-up company, and they occupy the higher rent spaces. So it's a tiered approach, and the cities that do it well, Silicon Valley, Boston, Route 128, places in Austin, say, there are these building spaces that accommodate companies that go through that growth stage. Now, a company that comes out and occupies a space, and you've heard it here, and this is validation of this, they don't stay in one location, they grow up. And as they grow up, their tastes and their needs change. And so too does the built environment need to change with their needs.
Rich,
Even the smallest of companies need a physical mailing address, a place that makes them look non-virtual. And so you end up getting places like Tech Brewery that can house you, and you can put an address on your business card. We're actually incubating a couple of companies right inside our space right now, and they can use our address for that purpose and get their mail delivered to us and have conferences they can use. And yeah, we're too old too, Dave. We don't have beer cans anywhere. Maybe once a year or something for a holiday party, but that's about it.
It's okay to have, we just have to clean them off.
Yeah, there you go. I think that one of the things a young company needs, I remember this when we were starting out 11 years ago at Menlo, you really need a month-to-month lease. It's incompatible with most of the office space leasers in a community because they want the long-term lease. And I remember seeking out, where Web Elite was in Fifth Quarter, whatever that's called. I remember seeing a sign in their window and saying to probably Jeff Harshey or whoever's name was in there, I said, Jeff, we want to just move in. We don't need a lot of changes. We don't need to do a lot of stuff to the building. We just want to move in. Well, you can kick us out. We just need this month-to-month space. And he's like, oh, we can't do that. Well, then we ended up moving into 212 North 4th next door to Cafe Verde. And we got a month-to-month lease there for 5 years. It's awesome. And when we moved out of there into Carytown, I went and looked at the Web Elite building. It was still empty 5 years later. And I'm like, you guys could have totally gotten rent from us for 5 years, and so, I think there's an opportunity there to incubate these small companies. And I can tell you, there is a major league trend in the nation around entrepreneurship and student entrepreneurship in these incubators that is happening. It is happening here in Ann Arbor too, and it is a force that will be a growing trend.
Can I just add one comment? Speaking of entrepreneurship, the fastest growth in entrepreneurship, this is by the Kauffman Foundation, which is a think tank for entrepreneurs and studies entrepreneurship nationally. The fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs nationally are persons who are 50 years of age and older. And last thing, I mentioned that because this too has land use consequences. While they are the fastest growing segment, okay, and some of them certainly need the kind of spaces.
They were the slowest moving.
While they're the fastest growing segment, not all of them require traditional type of space that we've been talking about. In many cases, these entrepreneurs, which they're rolling out of white collar careers and they're doing something different, they're looking for live workspace. Okay, so think loft apartment, right? Again, the kind of spaces that could be accommodated somewhere in and around your downtown, making it the kind of cool place that a lot of new entrepreneurs are going to want to come to and hang around in.
That certainly requires a little more zoning flexibility sometimes. And for Rich's comments, it requires landlords to be more flexible in how they approach their spaces.
I think there's an opportunity. I think there's a latent opportunity that landlords need to think about.
Todd, this one's probably best directed at you. So what successful models have you seen for ensuring an adequate supply of affordable/workforce housing? Is it mandating smaller units, which potentially controls prices? Is it actual rent controls? And how do you make sure cheap rents aren't swapped up by rich people looking for I don't know what the heck that says. Well, looking for a sweet deal, I guess, is what the situation is.
Okay, so, yes, there are a number of models that are in place and are continuing to emerge. Some of the more successful ones are where public entities or nonprofit entities basically control land and control that land in perpetuity and are able to dictate terms of what gets built, how many units, okay? The more density you have on a given size parcel will influence how affordable the ultimate rents or purchase price will be. So density is very important, which means that zoning for that density is critically important. Let me say this, we work for developers and we do financial analysis for developers. I will tell you, developers will build whatever it is the market will support, okay? They're not going to build what you want them to build. They will build what the market will support because they're in the business to make money. And they're not nefarious, okay? Every one of you lives in a house, most likely, that was built by a developer. I live in a house. Well, actually, I live in a house that was built in the 1890s, so I might not have been a developer, but developers are just like any business person. They're like water traveling the path of least resistance. Point them in the right direction with the appropriate zoning, urban design, and they're going to build what it is you want them to build. They are in the business of making a profit. So with respect to affordability model, increase zoning density. Make your nonprofit groups partners in these deals because nonprofit groups can act as conduit for federal money, whether it's low-income housing tax credits, new markets tax credits, okay? There needs to be that public-private partnership ultimately to make more housing available, not just for the lower income strata, but workforce housing for teachers and people that work in the public sector. And this is going to be a really critical issue, particularly in your community where prices are already spiking. And land, as they say, you're not making any more, right? So you've got a finite piece of asset. You've got to think about it strategically.
And I want to keep on that housing theme for just a second here and hear from our business owners. Are your employees clamoring to be downtown, to live in downtown, like you have located your business? And then there's going to be a question related to transportation.
I think the only employee of the room that's clamoring to be downtown is me. I'm going to pass the mic.
I think for us, it's a big mix. It's an interesting question about our mix, but we're probably primarily between 20 and 40. And a lot of the young families, I don't think would consider downtown, but a lot of the recent students and people that haven't gotten married yet, they do want to be downtown, and they do want to use public transportation right to work. So, okay, sure, folks.
I think of Tracy, she lives just off of Spring Street. She rides her bike in. We doubled her commute when we moved from Perry down to Liberty. But of course, I have my commute riding from Arbor Woods on my bike into Liberty. So I guess it's 6 1.5 does the other there. Ted lives down in Ypsilanti. He rides his bike in every day, or nearly every day. So that's kind of awesome. He must be in great shape by now. I think that I don't know. I know a lot of there's one guy that lives in the 411 Lofts. Is that what it's called? Right by Bobo there? Is that right one on Washington Street? And we're thinking of building a zip line from there, and so you can ride right into our space. So I'm excited that they're building another apartment building right across the street. I'm also with you on the hotel thing. Whoever said that in the comments that we need a quality hotel. Not that you did. Oh, good, excellent. That might be. And I would say, Campus Inn is a great hotel. There's nothing wrong with it, but we need another one. But that we get a lot of guests coming in from out of town. I don't hear my team complaining about this issue.
So downtown housing may not be, at least in this small sample, as critical an issue. Let me tie that to something that, Rich, your face obviously has been plastered all over transit. We've seen your face on the side of the ATA buses over the past few years. And, so how for having a successful, vibrant downtown for your business needs, how important is the efficiency and the options of transit? And I'm going to put that in the multiple categories, not just bus, but safe biking paths, good sidewalk networks, the zip cars, zip cars that we have.
Zip lines.
Yes. I'm going to be looking for that now. How important is that then to your employee base? Does that affect your decision making in your location? Or again, is that not a factor? And it'd be great if it worked, but we kind of just we manage.
I think transportation is huge. We are located a little over a block from the bus station. We have a bunch of employees who take the bus. We have usually 4 or 5 bikes and 3, 4 bikes and a Segway parked in front of our building. The DPA brought in some extra bike lock-up things for us when we moved into our new building. This is important to the people who work for us. They find different ways to come in. And, that's a huge part. It's a factor for us in being downtown. We want to see that encouraged. And, parking plays into this too. In our old building, we could see the Washington Street parking structure sign. And sometimes when that got really close to zero and we had a client meeting, that's a little bit of an issue for us. If our client is driving in from wherever and we've told them to park in the structure right there and there's no parking for them, suddenly we've got a client who's stressed out, coming to a meeting or whatever in a town they don't know, hopefully going to write us a big check. We don't want them stressed out. We want them relaxed. And so, we're really looking forward to the new underground lot opening and hopefully taking some pressure off the lot right next to us. Parking is really important. We would love there to be more meter parking, more turnover at that meter parking. So when a client comes in, they can park right in front of us. I don't care if it costs the client $5 an hour to park right in front of my building. The client's going to pay that. Turnover in those parking spots is important. Having it be really cheap so people can park there all day, that's what the structures are.
Susan, you can raise the parking fees in front of his space provider. Don't do that to the rest of us. Jonathan, do you want to comment on the transit, or is that not an issue for your employees? It's an issue. I don't live here, so. Okay, that's fine. Rich, you're the local face.
Yeah, well, for me, transit goes in many different directions. I will tell you that one of the issues in attracting and retaining youth in this area is having a vibrant downtown Detroit. We might not want to think too much about that, but that's a huge issue. And young people want to get down there, they want to have fun, and they want to get home safely. A train between Ann Arbor and Detroit would be huge for that. I can tell you, don't underestimate it. Kids, if you find out where they're going to places that have great train transit, efficient. It's a community building device. They go down to you go down to the Tigers game, you go down, you have some fun at some of the bars around downtown, and I can tell you, I've been enough downtown lately that there's actually a pretty darn cool downtown Detroit. You probably have to know where to go and where not to go and all that kind of stuff. But if you can get down there, have a few drinks, come home safely with your friends, that sort of thing, that would be huge. Our team, one of the reasons I got on the side of a bus is because we buy our Get Downtown passes every year for our whole staff. I've got one in my wallet right now. And so everybody on our team can use the Get Downtown pass. And some of them, if they come in from far away, they'll use the park and ride lots, and we comp them back the parking fee. If we don't have to buy a parking pass for our team, we give them the money back in their paycheck. So they make more money. It doesn't just save them money, it saves the team money. There's Ted. Hey, Ted, I was talking about you riding your bike in from Pennsylvania every day.
I rode my bike this morning.
Woo-hoo. Go, Ted. You're awesome. He's got a really cool bike, too. So, Ted and me, you may have the most unique commute to work story in Challenge Month. May is Commuter Challenge Month. Ted, actually, what's that?
Next Friday.
Are you doing it?
Yep.
Woohoo! So what they do is they get in their kayaks and they kayak home on the Huron River. It's awesome. There's like
You are all invited.
yeah, there are 4 or 5 of them that actually commute home on the Huron River. So it's awesome. We almost lost a team member during the rainy season.
Todd, you want to speak to this because you've obviously had, with your study on DEA stuff in Washington Street here. What's your observation? Again, you've had a lot of national projects and opportunities. What's your observation on our various transit, multi-modes, linkages? Do you perceive that it's working? Do you see that we're in the midst of a countywide transit enhancement plan right now that's being discussed, broadening levels of services? What's your observation as kind of the outsider?
Right. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, one, we just finished a project in Pittsburgh, in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh. If you're familiar, where it has a cluster of universities, including the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon and a few others. And there's some similar issues, but different, and transportation is a key one. And what we're seeing nationally is that bus, whether it's fixed, as in bus rapid transit, or just regular old bus, is really making a comeback as the transit source, or as the transit means of choice. Now, the problem is, or the issue is, we don't treat our bus riders equitably, okay? You don't always see, bus covers where they should be. You see folks standing out there waiting for the bus, and there's nothing to shelter them or sit on. Sometimes the buses aren't the cleanest things in the world, all right? But buses actually would get used more often if we treated bus riders or mass transit folks more, equitably, and like people that drive in cars. Secondly, the cities that really work best are those cities that have these kind of circulators, these free circulators, okay? They get people around the city. So it's one thing to say, I got here on a bus, right? Or I got here in some form of mass transit, but it's quite another thing to say, and I have other options when I need to get around town to my job, to an appointment, to the restaurant, to the grocery store, right? That's what completes the deal, all right? It's not just about getting in and out of the city, it's about getting your folks around the city. I went to Rutgers University for both graduate and undergraduate, and in New Brunswick, the bus system is free to anybody. I mean, you can be homeless, and there were homeless people sitting on the bus with us, but anybody can jump on that bus and get around the entire, actually 3 different cities, because our campus was spread across rivers. And there are certainly other places like it. It makes a huge difference. And you want to talk about livability and desirability for all folks? Keep this in mind. Behind housing, transportation is the next biggest cost in your budget, okay? And the food is closely rivaling it right now, but transportation. So when you talk about an economic issue and a business issue, and getting young people in particular to want to live downtown, make more transit available and make it inexpensive, because I tell you what, you're going to get it back 10 times in the economic productivity that you get.
That's a great insight. Thank you on that. Todd, you referenced regional analysis and how things can pull you up or drag you down, and actually, Rich touched on this with his Detroit comment. Any perception here on the health of Ypsilanti and how it affects the Ann Arbor community? And it may not be your worker base, but it's guys who are working in places like this establishment and our food places. How do you see some of the issues that are, they're struggling with on the eastern side of the county affecting, shall we say, that opportunity for vibrancy by bringing in multiple economic demographics to fill all of the functions that make it appealing for tech companies and others? Anyone who has some thoughts, Todd, Moonlight, or Rich, you've been in the community a long time.
Just to make sure I understand the question. Is the question, how do regional communities influence what happens in Ann Arbor?
That would be I think that's the situation. How do they impact it, and then maybe we expand that even to Detroit and
Sure.
The good and the bad, there's that concept.
Sure. So, we are a society that likes to think we can escape our problems by moving. And all we do is we get away from it in terms of sight, but it never goes away. And eventually it hits us somewhere, usually in the wallet eventually. And economies are regional, and they are connected. And so what happens in Detroit and happens in Ypsilanti and other places does have influence on Ann Arbor, just as Ann Arbor has influence on those places. And it's a matter of time. How long does it take? It's almost like cancer, right? And I've worked in enough hardcore places. I was a deputy redevelopment director in the city of Camden, when it was still like #1 in the nation in homicide and crime, and it was the poorest in the nation. I can tell you I've gone into places that look like third world countries, and you would think they were bombed out places in Europe, and saying this is an American city. Well, eventually those places impact the surrounding suburban community. And then the surrounding suburban community becomes that place that it was 30 years ago, right? And it spread. So the question is, you have a shared destiny, and there are linkages. Obviously, you're not going to necessarily, reach across to Ypsilanti and say, let us help you, do whatever. But, your workers and those folks who are coming in from those locations, you get an understanding of what's going on there. Sometimes it's as simple as, okay, can we improve transit between the two locations, right? Can we improve housing choice between the two locations? That's enough to change the dynamic of what happens somewhere else. And again, while you're somewhat insulated in Ann Arbor, eventually you're not. And those places will influence ultimately what does happen here.
And I'm curious, from our three entrepreneurs, and Rich, we obviously know one of your employees that commutes in from MC. Do you have a lot of that, shall we say, cross-county where your employees are coming from that although you are building your business in downtown Ann Arbor, you're seeing the need to, at least if nothing else, be aware of what's happening in their hometowns?
So I'm involved with Leadership Ann Arbor this year, which is a program from the Ann Arbor MC Regional Chamber, which the chamber's just merged, as most of you hopefully will know. And I think that the merger of those chambers was a good sign of, it's a step in trying to link the two communities, because the Ann Arbor and MC communities are very tightly linked. A lot of people who don't make as much do live in Ipsy, and then they commute to Ann Arbor. If you look at bus usage down the Washtenaw County, the Washtenaw Avenue corridor, I mean, it's huge. And AATA has recently added some buses. They got a grant back in December, I believe, to help fund some of those buses. I see Don nodding, because I must be right. Our communities are linked, and we have employees that do come in from Ipsy. Not a lot, but some. And Ann Arbor can't be the star if Ipsy fails. We need to support them, and people are going to come in from them, and it's important that we work together. We've got the collaboration now in the school busing. I think that's another great thing, where if we take communities and we try to work together, we can lower costs. I know not everybody thinks that it works as well as it did. It only saved $500,000 instead of $2 million. Can you use an extra $500,000? I can. You guys need an extra $500,000 in your budgets? I'm good with that. It may not be the roaring success that people hope for, but when we create these opportunities of collaboration, it benefits everyone. And I would just like to encourage people to think about that and think about ways we can collaborate more with our local communities. It doesn't have to just be Ipsy. It could be Saline or Dexter or whatever. AATA runs now a bus between here and Chelsea and one to Canton. That's taken a bunch of people off the roads and out of my parking spots that I want to be available. And that's a good thing for all of us. Yes, we're subsidizing that to some degree. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. We want people coming into our community here. We want it to be vibrant. And to some degree, that means we're going to need to reach out to other parts. Otherwise, we're just going to end up building bigger and bigger parking structures. If we get rid of all the busing, we need to build, another 3, 4 more parking structures? Who wants to see 3 more parking structures downtown. I don't. I want to see, office space or residential or a few more restaurants. It's all about choices.
Yeah, we do have a fair bit of employees that commute in from other Ypsilanti and other areas. I think one of the biggest factors is, well, Ann Arbor has a deep talent pool. There often are specialized talent needs, and there is a very large metro area here that we want to be able to draw from. That, the main transportation is highway. There really isn't a whole lot to get. In fact, we have one employee that's now commuting from Windsor because it was a very specialized role. I don't know if you've heard of the Duke, but you need people that are Duke developers. They're not allowed in the area, and so we would rather be able to draw from a larger group of people. We want Ann Arbor to be successful, but from the Detroit area as well. I want the whole Detroit area to be successful, and if talent can move around, then there'll be a greater amount of access to jobs. If people are limited to a very small commuting area, then they're not gonna be as mobile.
Ann Arbor, or Ypsilanti is a really cool city. And on a Friday night, when my wife and I decide to go out to dinner, we're just as likely to choose side tracks as we are anything downtown Ann Arbor. We had our holiday party, our company holiday party at the Corner Brewery. Ted, I don't know, do you know how many people on our team live in Ypsilanti? I'm just not keeping track of this.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
I can name off the top of my head.
And I don't know, is it cheaper to live in Ypsilanti than it is in Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, I'm always kind of struck by this, we need cheaper housing sort of thing, because I'm like, I think you can find it here. I mean, there's a lot of affordable little neighborhoods.
You're the CEO.
I think there is. I mean, I don't know. You can ask my team, but I think that this idea, we have this funny poster at Menlo that playfully talks about flights that you can get the Midwest Express from Ann Arbor to Toledo nonstops daily. And then there's this other one we have where it shows a subway line going from downtown Ann Arbor to downtown Ypsilanti. And I have to admit, every time I look at that, I'm like, that would be so cool. Because quite frankly, we do have to keep our communities connected. When I think of the workforce we're trying to attract, I am just as likely to think about Eastern Michigan University. Because, you know what? Those kids actually do want to stay in Michigan. And so they're easier to recruit. And the other thing we do, and this is, I'm not as concerned about the number of students we lose, because we're just as likely to attract students from other universities to come here. We got students from the University of Illinois, from Haverford, from Vermont. We get them from coming from all over the country to come here. Because quite frankly, a lot of kids that go to college, they want to go live somewhere else than they grew up, or they want to go somewhere else. And so, is it a little bit of extra work? Kind of. It's not actually as much as you think if you sort of, reach out correctly into the community. But the fact of the matter is, this is a great destination for people who've never been here before, because they find it interesting. It's a new place to live.
I know we are up against the 7 o'clock hour, and I want to certainly thank our panel, Todd in particular, for your keynote presentation on this, Rich, Jonathan, and David for offering your insight as local business leaders and your perspective on how competitive downtown is for your business to succeed and for you to be able to attract the talent. It sounds like overall Ann Arbor is on the right track, which is encouraging to hear. There's some areas that probably are opportunities. It sounds like certainly from some of the data, housing is an area that is something the city needs to be very aware of from the downtown opportunities for the variety of demographics. It sounds like transit. We need to continue to look at that. And thankfully, with this countywide plan in place right now, or the discussions of it, there's a great opportunity for that. And it also sounds like there's a little bit of office space issues, so that you have the variety of options that are available, so that you're not pinched into one opportunity or another. And when I say that office opportunity, it comes not just from the spaces, but how those spaces are used to meet your needs, while continuing to create kind of that creative environment, third spaces, and all the other things that certainly make downtown Ann Arbor a pretty vibrant community, and one that obviously has been worthwhile to highlight in our Pure Michigan campaign. So once again, thank you everyone for your participation. Jeff, I guess I'm going to turn it back to you for closing out.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks also to Michigan State Housing Development Authority that underwrites our speaker series. Of course, the Ann Arbor DDA, who we're partnered with on this. Conor O'Neill's. Please check out Concentrate for the time and topic of our next speaker event. I'm working on it currently. Feel free to send me your ideas and comments. My email is jeff@concentratemedia.com. And thanks for coming on such a beautiful day. I could just remind everybody to fill out the survey sheets that the DDA has put on the tables. I promised I'd remember that.